Hi, my name is Jessica Rosenstrau, and this is Copyright in the Computer, a case study looking at copywriting on computers. So the situation is Mrs. Lynn, without discussing with me, the principal, she's made copies of newly purchased software for individual teachers' classroom computers. I learned of this through a teacher who was concerned about the copyright violations. And when I approached Mrs. Lynn, she admitted that she knew about the copyright laws, but she was trying to save our school money and also get the programs into more children's hands. So let's look at the parties involved. So what do we know so far? So we have myself, Mr. Staple, the principal. We have Mrs. Lynn, who's the librarian, media specialist, computer tech teacher. We have Mrs. Brandon, who's new to our school this year, who came to me with the concerns. You have Mrs. Evans, who's the PTA president, who helped make the CDs. And then you also have the other teachers in grades 2nd through 4th grade, as well as the students in 2nd through 4th grade. When and where? So this is in a rural town called St. Regis. This school is a K through 8 public school with around 420 students. It's 25 miles from a larger city, and this is my 3rd year as the principal here. So let's move from what we know, the facts, to the legal issues. So Copyright Act of 1976 forbids the unauthorized copying of another's work. So in this case, Mrs. Lynn is copying from these programs, making copies of these programs, which is a violation of the copyright law. Oftentimes, we fall under fair use, but a factor you have to consider when you're looking to see if this case would fall under fair use is if the copying harms the marketing of sales of the program. In this case, yes, it is hurting the sales of the program, because by making copies, we're not purchasing more of the CDs. So in this case, the answer would be yes. So it does not fall under the Fair Use Act. Then you need to look at breach of contract. So oftentimes when you're looking at districts, when you're looking at districts, they have regulations on copywriting. And so in this case, because she's violating the laws and regulations governing copyright, she would also be in violation with the school board policies. Now let's talk about the ethical concerns that we have. So no physical harm is happening, obviously, but the company is losing potential money as well as the author, so they're not receiving their dues. So that is an ethical concern. Another ethical concern is thinking about your morals, knowing that it's wrong, but still doing it anyway. As educators, we have a duty to lead by example. And so we must know we're responsible for knowing the federal laws and state laws, but also we must follow them. So we're ethically and legally bound. So in this case, she's knowing that she's making the copies, but still doing it anyway. She's ethically in the wrong. So then we have to look at in between the legal and the ethical, you have somewhere called kind of the gray area, if you will. So in this case, Mrs. Lynn is very believes she's helping the kids, and she's helping the school save money and promote the educational success for the students. So all good. Her heart's in the right place. Unfortunately, by not gaining permission to make these copies, she's breaking the law. So now, looking at that, thinking about the legal, the ethical, knowing what we know so far, what exactly is the problem here? So the problem I stated was Mrs. Lynn decided to make copies of newly purchased copyrighted programs that the school purchased for the technology lab without receiving permission from the company to do so. So she's taking these programs that we bought for the computer lab, and she's making CDs and giving them to the classroom teachers to use on the classroom computers. So now let's look at the known facts, really break it down. So let's first talk about the people in this case. So in this case, you have myself, who is the I'm the third year principal. I'm not originally from St. Regis, so when I took over as administrator, I've worked very hard at trying to build relationships with not only my staff, but also within the community. Mrs. Lynn is the librarian slash media specialist slash computer lab teacher, and she worked with me to help decide which programs to purchase. And she then decided to go ahead and make copies of those programs we purchased without permission from the author. Mrs. Brandon is a new teacher to St. Regis. She has 3 years of teaching experience, but she is new to our building. And she refused the copied CDs due to concerns over the copyright violations. You have Mrs. Williams, as well as some other teachers, but Mrs. Williams is Mrs. Brandon's third grade team teacher who accepted the copied programs, and she's been at Regis her whole career, and she's very excited about these programs. And then finally we have Mrs. Evans, who's the PTA president, who helped Mrs. Lynn make copies of these programs. Now, some things that we don't know about the people involved. So we don't know how many copies have been distributed through grades 2 through 4. We don't know if these programs have already been installed in the computers. We don't really know the relationship between Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Brandon and the other teachers. We also don't know the relationship between Mrs. Lynn and the PTA president. Are they best friends? Is this a case where it's going to get out in the community about this? There's also no mention of a superintendent, school board, or the district personnel in this. So now, let's talk about what we know about the place. So St. Regis is located 25 miles outside of a big city. It has 2 grocery stores and a drugstore. So it's a smaller population. The K through 8 school has only around 420 students. So you have 2 teachers per grade level. You have financial support, which comes from fundraising done twice a year, as well as a little from the state. Our annual budget helps with teachers buying new basic supplies, as well as we alternate between computers or new software purchases every 2 years. What we don't know is we're not too sure. They didn't really go into depth about the demographics of the small town, and they didn't talk about the involvement of the community. I'm assuming it's a pretty, you could assume since they do have 2 fundraisers a year, that the community is involved. And we definitely know that Mrs. Evans is the PTA president and she's involved. So now let's look at the programs. So St. Regis School specifically. So it's a public school for grades K through 8, around 420 students, 2 special education teachers, 1 K through 4, and the other serves the upper grades. We have a computer lab that teachers can sign up to use, and we have computers in each classroom. Now, what we don't know is the demographics of the students, percentage of special education students, the curriculum being used, and we're not sure, and we don't know how many computers are in each classroom. So now, let's prioritize our information that we have so far. So if this situation is not dealt with, we may be liable, we will be liable as a school district, and the librarian could face legal consequences. The entire situation could have a negative effect on the staff, myself, and the community. This could potentially damage my reputation as an administrator within the community on how I handle this situation. And I have not contacted my legal team nor my superintendent on the situation yet. So let's talk about looking at this information. Now let's talk about what options we have. So the first option we have is to do nothing. So if I do nothing, and I allow the CDs to be put on the computers and the programs to be installed, I'm taking no action. The consequences of this are it's ethically unacceptable. I'm putting the district, myself, my staff in a liable position, and we could face legal troubles in this case. The next option I have is to destroy all the copies, remove it from all classroom computers, and add it to our purchase list for next year, if next year is a year that we're buying, if we're buying software. If I follow through with this, it's ethical and lawful, but the teachers, the community may be a little disgruntled, those who were all in support of putting these CDs onto the computers, as well as not knowing the number of computers. This could take several years in order to purchase all the programs we're looking at to put them on the classrooms. The other option I came up with was, I called it a teamwork, working together, reaching out to the author of the program and requesting permission to make copies, hold a staff meeting and discuss exactly what copyright laws are, ask the district legal person to come in order to answer questions that my staff may have, take a poll on which teachers would like these programs to see how much and how many we need, we would be looking at to buy. And also pull in Mrs. Evans, the PTA president, and brainstorm with her ways to pull in the community to maybe help offset the cost of these programs in the classroom. So when I look at this, I need to kind of look at the pros and cons before I make each decision. So really looking at doing nothing, pros is I'm not rocking the boat. So I'm not having those difficult conversations. I'm allowing all students to access these programs, whether it be in the lab or in their classroom. The cons is I'm not addressing this at all. So I'm not being a leader within my building. I am not adhering to district policies, nor am I following federal laws pertaining to the copyright laws. I'm not being ethical or equitable to my staff because I'm disregarding Mrs. Brandon's concerns, and I'm completely ignoring Mrs. Lynn's violations. So those are the cons of doing nothing. Then I look at destroy copies and add into the budget. The pros are I'm being ethical and legal. I'm adhering to the district's policies and the laws. The cons are I could definitely going to rock the boat, and I'm going to upset teachers in the building that were completely for this. And I could risk alienating Mrs. Brandon as well as myself. And I'm not providing the students with the programs in their classrooms to promote success. And then my third option, teamwork. So by working together as a team, I'm showing that I value everyone's thoughts and opinions. I'm working to create a positive work environment and building stronger relationships, not only with my staff, but also by pulling in Mrs. Evans. Some cons are my teachers still may be unhappy with me. They may be frustrated with Mrs. Brandon bringing up the copyright violations. And it could take time, either waiting on the permission to make those copies or being denied access and then having to add it to the budget further down the line. So what's my best option here? So for sure, you have to destroy the copies and delete them from the classroom computers if they've already been put on. The staff meeting, I think because so many teachers were in favor of making copies, we definitely need to revisit copyright laws and regulations. Maybe have Mrs. Lynn, since she's kind of taking a proactive role and working so well with the teachers, maybe she would like to lead this. Have our legal advisor present just to address any questions that Mrs. Lynn and myself cannot answer. Pull the staff to find out how many would like to add these programs onto their classroom computers. Write the author requesting copying permission, and then pull in Mrs. Evans and brainstorm ways to purchase the programs for the classes. So how would I go about implementing this? So the first thing is I would sit down with Mrs. Lynn. So I want to praise her for her resourcefulness and proactive thinking. That she's really trying. Discuss the consequences of her actions. So discuss with her the copyright laws, fair use regulations, and the software's copyright page. Look over that again. Show her some cases where where schools have been fined. For example, the case in Houston where the school had to pay $7.8 million for the violation. Discuss how to rectify this situation, writing the author for permission to copy, brainstorming ideas on how to get around this in the meantime while we're waiting on permission from the author or purchasing additional copies. For instance, we could have how to ask students to access the programs at their instructional level, maybe add more time slots to the tech lab, maybe a before or after school programming to use these programs. So different things like that to help kind of come up with some solutions instead of just I can't. The other steps are to ensure all CDs were destroyed and no classroom computer has the programs on them, to have a presentation at a staff meeting on copyright laws, to poll the teachers to ask to find out who wants these programs on, pull in Mrs. Evans and maybe discuss ways to pull in the community and maybe get some more funding to purchase these programs for our classrooms. And at the end of the day, what we have to remember is that the author at the end may say no. And so we have to come up with other ideas. So that's why pulling in Mrs. Lynn, maybe coming up with other ways to raise funds for these programs. And it's imperative that as the administrator, I remember that I have to address the why. We cannot just make copies and let it lay low. And as teachers, we have a legal and ethical responsibility to our children to model this appropriate behavior. And that is the end of my case study. Thank you.